Welcome back to another reading and correcting of Stepping Up with me, Kindar, the Tiger Writes, and Ty, the Tiger Supervisor. Today we are doing chapter 31, and of course, bully. Oh well. I think I have a way to keep us from being broken up, Tibs said, then shoved food in his mouth, ignoring the looks. He'd been thinking about it more and more as their run approached, and with it being the next day, he was out of time to find a different method. I was not aware we were about to be broken up, Kamdar said. He means from another one of us graduating, I said. I thought we'd agreed we were going to make sure to fail whatever test they were going to give you. Jekyll said. That's not sure to work, Tibbs replied. My idea is going to ensure it. I don't think there's any way to make sure we don't graduate, Nina said. If we don't do the runs, Tibbs said, we can't get stronger. That is not true, Kamdar replied, but I understand your reasoning. But we have to do the runs, I said. That's what we're here for. And with how attentive the guild is to you, Tibbs, I doubt they'll let you just not do it. Yeah, this is dialogue, but still. And with how attentive they are to you, Tibbs, said, I doubt they'll let you just not do it without punishing you in some way, maybe by breaking us up. I'm sure they'll let you. I doubt they'll let you. But I doubt they'll let you just not do it without punishing you in some way. Maybe you know what? It's time. Tibbs nodded. That had been one of the reasons this method was the only one he could come up with. Everything else, and Tyrannia might decide he was testing patience. We can't do a run if one of us is in a cell. No, Jekyll stated. Why would any of us end up in a cell? As asked. Tibbs raised an eyebrow at the archer. For breaking a rule? You're always breaking rules, Ness replied, but for once, without accusation. You're a rogue, you have to. No, Tibbs, Jekyll said. But if I get caught, Tibbs told Naz, I'll still be sent to a cell, and the Tim can't do a run. I said no, but you don't get caught. Now Miss Stone had some annoyance in it. Too good. Tibbs smiled, surprised at the indirect compliment. I can make sure I get caught. Why did you all make me the team leader if you're yeah, there's a just in here. You're just going to ignore me? Jekyll asked. There's going to be other runs, Tibbs replied. And once Stowe graduates to row, the loot's going to be better. The fighter looked at Tibbs. You really think this is about the loot? When is it not? Serena asked, covering up a smile with her tankard. Jekyll opened his mouth and closed it. This time it isn't. It's not going to be bad, Tibbs said. I'll make sure it's something small, so I'll just get a few days. So it'll just be a few days. Harry likes me, so he's not going to be harsh. Knuckles hates rogues, Jekyll replied, and he won't be involved in you being sent to a cell unless it's big. But I don't want you to do it anyway. You have no idea what the cells are like. Tibbs shrugged. There'll be other rogues, probably other runners. It's not that bad. Won't be as crowded as the cell I was in before coming here. Jekyll shook his head. There's more than just runners breaking the rules, Tibbs. Most runners make sure they're not to break them because it can cause them a run. What you have in those cells are criminals coming here because they think a new town is easy picking. Only they then have to deal with Knuckles' guard, and one of the reasons they're better than they should be for a town like this is... And one of the reasons they're better than they should be for a town like this has more to do with us. Keeping them on... Oh, boy. Only they then have to deal with Knuckles' guards. And one of the reasons they're better than they should be for a town like this you know what? There's no call. Is us keeping them on their toes. Oh, I see. It has more to do. Oops. has more to do with us keeping them on their toes than them working for Knuckles. So those criminals in the cells aren't going to be happy with any runners in there. I have a sense. Where are the cells? Tibs? Okay. Didn't realize he didn't know. The only time he had a reason to want to go there was when he wanted to speak to Bardic after he was captured. But by the time he woke from his injuries, the adventurer had already been sent to prison. It's in the guild, Reno said, pensive. I hadn't thought about why before. It's the only official building, I said. So it makes sense that it's there. But it also means they have enchantment in place all over the building. I mean, all over the place. No. Actually, you know what? It also means they have enchantment all over the building. And she said, and how else can you keep someone who has an element from using that to escape? Would anyone try that? As asked. You've seen the kind of people they bring in, haven't you, Maz? Trickola asked. Anytime Omegas arrive now, some of them try to run. You think getting an element, getting special power, will suddenly make them not try to use them to escape from any kind of captivity? And do you spend much time in those cells yourself? Dumbledore asked. Trickle snorted. Of course I did. You weren't here before Knuckle was in charge of the guards. Before Tibs was there to make sure I stuck by the rules. I was always picking fights. Never. Just pretend you did, Trickle said. The story sounds better that way. He sobered. But I'm serious. I don't want you to be thrown in a cell just to keep us together. I'm not going to care how young you are. You aren't good enough to survive what they do to you. You would, Dumbledore said. Jekyll grinned. Oh, there's no doubt of that. But I'd have to deal with my man once I got it. And he has more important threats to use if I step too far out of line. We'll be fine. Kierna said as Tib tried to come up with something to convince Jackal would be fine. Yeah. Doesn't do that. Just try. You'll see. Yes! Stowe exclaimed as Tibbs and his team walked up the step. Now you're really back in. His enthusiasm vanished. This is new. A cleric by the door glanced at them and asked in a bored tone if any of them needed healing. Then motioned for the guards. The guards. Oh, there's two of them. To let them in. Inside, Tibbs' step faltered. Then he forced himself forward. Stowe hadn't targeted the people. He just tested them like he tested everyone else. He just tested them like he tested everyone who came in, and they had failed. To distract himself on the pain, he sensed the wall. He was sure he'd felt something during his last run. So, people said, corruption? Tibbs checked he was far enough inside. It was the only way to get rid of the essence that was in me. By making it one of your essence? How is that any better? You do remember what that stuff did to me, right? That wasn't the element. Tibbs tried to think of a way to explain it. The elements aren't like you and me. You or me. They don't care about this. It isn't corruption that hurt you. Bardic is who did it, using corruption. Is there going to be a thing you accumulating elements? I thought you had all the elements you needed already. That's why we can talk. Oh, he does say it. I'm going to have to make changes down the road. Huh. I forgot that one. Still was debating. He decided, but he didn't mind. As badly as the corruption had hurt him, it was nothing compared to what Stowe had said. And his question reminded him that he'd been so focused on dealing with the corruption in him, he'd forgotten Water's word. I need to get the rest of the core elements. He went to name them, then realized that as part of the conversation, forgotten to sense the wall. Hey, are you trying to distract me? No, why? I know you put something in the hall. And now I have to walk back to sense the wall because you made me forget to do it. His friends roll froze. Oh, sorry. Still said, I didn't mean to, but you aren't there yet. I'll be quiet. I thought this hall was supposed to be safe, Mez said, taking hold of the string on his bow. Tibbs felt the essence. the fire essence for me. It is safe, Tibs said, as the others also went on the defensive. Do you need us to stay back? It's not dangerous, Tibs repeated. It was there last time, but I didn't have the time to search for it. Thought about something. Karina, has anyone from the other team said anything about this hall? Stopped paying attention to the papers being exchanged between the team sorcerers. The longer it went on without Harry putting a stop to it, the less hidden it became. Now it was normal for sorcerers to huddle around a table and discuss their map of the dungeon. No, this is the first time I've heard of there being anything in this hall. Did none of you sense something when we exited last time? You mean that time when I was barely holding myself together? Michael asked. He grinned. No, can't say that I did. But then again, until I walk into essence, I don't really notice this. Do I? Notice it. I believe it would be helpful to have more information to work from. Something is rather vague. Tibs tried to remember details. It had been like what he'd sensed on the second floor, but had it been the same? He'd been distracted by Jackal when he was there. It was the shape of the door, and it had a lot of essence as part of it. Yours were there, I'm sure of that, but you should still be able to tell when there's essence, even if it isn't yours. Jackal closed his eyes, and his entire face creased in concentration. Kamdar got a faraway look, and Karina tilted her head. Maz just stared at Tibs and couldn't work out if he was annoyed, angry, or just hadn't gone before they entered. Got nothing, Jackal said with a put upon sigh. Then you aren't doing it right, Karina said. There's stone all around us. You should be able to sense that. Yes, that I got, the fire replied, but that's all I also have nothing, Kamdar said, and Karina shook her head. Tibs tried to figure out how that could be. There were a lot of essence woven through the walls, especially earth, but also enough air that Karina should be able to sense the difference between. You haven't been taught about etching and weaving, have you? Forgotten that some of what he'd learned was more advanced, but the etching was needed for the test to graduate Row, so it had to be basic in them too. I know etching, I said it, not that I use it now that I can make fire arrows. It was how I made my explosive arrows before. Mentally etched the essence into the tip to create the effect. I knew it! My teacher said I had to use a knife to etch essence. Maybe it's a rogue thing? I said. No, it's a mental discipline, Karina said. And I know etching too, but I'm nowhere near learning weaving. I asked my teacher about enchanting, and she said I had to learn patience first. I do not know the terms you are using, as I had no one to teach me, Kamdar said. I do mold my essence through and around my staff. It does sound like what you mean. Plus, I do not expect enchanting is something I am capable of, as that is a sorcerer's purview, even among purity. I thought purity only had clerics, I said. Purity is an element, and like all elements, they can be of any class, but they don't work for the guild and they only train at the purity dungeon. Then they work mainly as support for the clerics. As fascinating as the conversation is getting, Pickle said, yawning, I'm here to do a run, not find out about what purity do or don't do. Tibs, is it safe to continue? Keep talking, he said, walking further in. I'll check it out. Tibs, Jekyll whined, don't want to listen to them. He smiled at his friend's antic, then focused on the wall. It had been the one on his right, and within a dozen paces he sensed the door-like shape. Couldn't tell what essence made the door, but there was a bundle of every essence connecting to it in the way the triggers for traps were. Picked water, since that he had the most, but nothing happened. Studying the bundle, he found another thread containing water. Every thread was double, he realized, but they weren't identical. Where the thread he held was made entirely of water, the other one was water around an empty center. He pushed the two threads together until it was all water. Essence shifted as the space within the doorway shimmered with a golden light. Then he was looking at the bridge going over the pool of water on the second floor. It was Mrs. idea. Still said with pride. Took me a while to work it out. Connecting two locations to each other isn't particularly easy. And who explained the calculations behind it? And he said. Tibbs glanced around to make sure his friends were still occupied, then whispered, Hi, Kenny. Hello, Tibbs. You did, Still said. I didn't claim I'd done everything. No, you just have a tendency not to mention my contribution. I just forget, he replied, annoyed. Tibbs kept himself from replying as he noticed someone approaching. Is that the second floor? Mez asked. The dungeon says it was your idea. I never talked with it, the Archer replied defensively. It hears everything we say, Irina said, having joined them. You said the runs would be easier if we didn't have to do the first floor all the time. This is Karina, so it should be she. Reach for the opening. Should you be touching this? Eldar said. It could be dangerous. It isn't, Still said. The calculation all line up, Irina added. Then there's a slight hesitation. Reminded him that for as much as Ganny seemed to know, she, like Stowe and Tibbs' team, was learning as they went. I had a BB go through, Stowe said. Nothing happened. A big broke, gun terrified. The bigger one wouldn't fit in it. There's nothing to touch, Kirna said, waving ahead through the open space. Neat, Triple said. It'll make coming back a lot faster. Come on, loot isn't going to collect itself with us just looking at it. At this, why don't we go through? Tibbs asked. He was curious if this would feel anything like the transportation platform. I'm with Tibbs, Miss said. This lets us start the second floor faster. And miss the loot that's on this floor, Jekyll countered. It's not like there's a lot of it, Rena replied, studying the doorway's edges. I agree, Endor said. I, too, would prefer heading directly to the more rewarding test. Loot! Jekyll pointed toward the trap room. Only a handful of silver, Rena said. Loot! Jekyll sighed. This would go on for a while. He stepped through. Tibbs! Jekyll and Kirina said at the same time. There was a slight tingling that vaguely felt like when he traveled on the platform. Then it was gone, and he stood next to the stair going up. Tibbs! Kirina called, her voice distorted. Are you okay? It was lower, sounding almost like she was a man. I'm fine, he answered, then was distracted from studying the alcove the opening was in by the way his friends looked at one another. Can you hear me? We can, Jekyll said, his voice higher than Kirina's normal one, and vibrating. You sound like a morning songbird. I don't know what those sound like. The fighter stared at him. You have got to stop sleeping through the mornings. Your voice is really high and has a song-like quality to it. It's funny, but now you can now you can come back so we can do this floor. Tibbs smiled. Or you can come through and we can do this one. Loot, Tibbs, loot! It's only a few silver. It's only a few silver's worth, Tibbs countered. Not to chuckle at how his friend sounded like a young girl clamoring for candies. How can you say no to loot? He demanded suspiciously. You're a rogue. I have enough coin to get anything I want. Jekyll's expression turned to one of horror. You can never have enough coins. His watch as Mez and Kamdar moved behind the fighter. With a nod, they ran at him and Tibbs moved out of the way. Jekyll stood there, the two with a shoulder against his back. He looked over his shoulder. What are you doing? Kept pushing hard enough their feet slipped on the stone floor. Trying to get you to go through, Mez said with clenched teeth. Jekyll rolled his eyes. Lamba Earth fighter here. I'm not moving until I decide to. Then be reasonable, Rena said. Give you the silver you'd get clearing the first floor, if that's what it takes. Jekyll stared at her, then stepped through the opening. By the time Mez and Kamdar crashed to the floor, the fighter was at Tibbs. Was by Tibbs's did? By Tibbs's side. That was weird. He turned. Well, what are you waiting for? What are you all waiting for? We have a floor to clear. Mez glared. Murder the fighter as he got to his feet, but then hesitated in stepping forward. Kirina and Kamdar stepped through. It's going to be void essence, she mused. I never read anything about it used this way, but that's the only one I can think of that can do this. I wonder why we have platforms instead of doorways like this. I wish you could get me one of those platform things, Still said. A lot of runners talk about it. Thomas reminded Tibbs of something and took the cylinder out of his pouch. As you need to come through, put the cylinder down on the other side of the doorway. I can't take this while you're in the room. Actually, Stowe said, a dozen step away is enough. Then why can't you make changes to a room while we're in it? They're bigger than a dozen paces. Mez still hadn't moved, so Tibbs got his arm and pulled. Mez resisted and stuck to it. Our room is more complex. I can change one specific thing if that's far away, but there's a lot of interconnectivity between what they do, so anything more than changing the look of a stone needs changes all over the room to work. The cylinder melted into the floor. I wish she'd gotten me the cube. Frost wasn't willing to lend it to me. She give you that? Karina asked. I thought she was a fighter. Don't use me as an example of what fighters are like, Pickle said. I'm not sure, but I knew Payan too. The rest faded as she just realized what she'd said. They swallowed the pain, pushed down the desire to accuse Stowe of killing his friend. They were runners, like he was. It was the danger of what they did. You can recreate it now, right? Tibbs asked. Miss Thunder didn't reappear. Frost is expecting me to return it. Focusing on that was better than thinking of what happened. It reformed and Tibbs picked it up. It's an interesting mechanism, surprisingly simple. For what it does. Makes you wonder why you didn't think of it before, right? Kenny asked with a hint of snark in her tone. There had been an accusation in her previous comment. Were they fighting about something? All right, people called. We're here, so let's get going. Karina, was a consensus on crossing the pool. They sensed ahead as they stepped to the start of the bridge. It's getting complicated, she replied, looking over the paper. The pool is pretty much the only way, unless we want to risk the ledge going around. The triggers on the bridge are too fast for most of the tent. There's also something in the water, you said the last time, so swimming isn't a good choice. Still don't know how, as said. We've seen what happens when Tibbs iced the pool, but no one's recreated it. There's no telling what the dungeon has done to make them tougher. I nominate Tibbs to use the ledge, Temple said. Because he's a rogue? Karina asked. Because he likes to climb walls, which this basically is. Only he's got something under his feet, and without the corruption, he'll be able to reach that thing that could turn the traps off. Karina, Tibbs called in the ensuing silence. How fast did they say the triggers are? Frowned, studying their motion. They just say it's fast enough that they didn't want to risk it, especially that last trigger. The way the lines move and at their speed, the opening isn't there for very long. This doesn't feel that much faster to me. He waited until the line was high and stepped under it. Moving to the next one let him sense the last trigger. Frowned. Are you sure? I think Jackal can cross that last one easily. He turned, and the fighter was at the first line, and extended before him. Since we can all sense the triggers, I think this is the easiest way now. He watched as Jackal's hand moved in time with the line. Can't you sense it at a distance? He asked. The fighter shrugged. This is easier. Stepped under it. I'm with Tibbs. If this is the speed the others are at, I'm not going to have a problem. Giving a frown, flipping through the paper sheet. I don't get it. More than one said the bridge couldn't be crossed anymore. Not just recent Upsilon either. Francis, on Armory's team, swore this room was now set on killing anyone stepping into it. Tibbs frowned. This would be where Stowe commented on other teams and how they'd made mistakes. Maybe he wasn't listening. It had sounded like he and Ganny were about to argue. Study the triggers. Maybe one of the changes was that their speed varied from one time to the other, or depending on when they reached the room. Having to clear the first floor meant that they'd be here later. This could be a reward for using the doorway. He stepped around the trigger, moving side to side. Unless Tibbs says otherwise, Trickle said. We're using the bridge. I say that we don't take for granted that next time you'll be like this, he replied, approaching the last trigger, and we'll be fine. He waited for the opening to come. He waited for the opening to come twice, paying attention for changes, and When there were none, he crossed it on the third. He stepped off the bridge and looked at his friends. Jekyll was at the last trigger. Serena was at the one who was the only one not on the bridge yet, still looking at her picture. Serena, we can look at them later. Oh. She put them away and stepped on the bridge as Kandar reached Tibs. She stepped onto the first, or on the second, and crouched for the third, but froze, and Tibbs's heart started beating again. What's wrong? Jekyll asked. Nearly mistimed it, she replied. Her eyes moved in time with the line going up and down. Then she hurried across, the one moving from side to side, almost catching her. She turned when she was off the bridge. This was definitely nowhere near as fast as they led me to think. You think this is because of the doorway letting us get through faster? I could see the dungeon setting this trap to speed up as an incentive to get other groups to through the first floor faster, or to look for a way to cut through it entirely. Well, they're not telling you the truth, Pickle said, so we'll make mistakes. She yelled defiantly. This is research. We're not going to accomplish anything if we withhold information from one another. Jekyll nodded. And sorcerers are so well known for always sharing everything they know, right? Yes, Serena replied forcefully. Jekyll didn't look impressed. We'll take time for you to make notes before continuing. What can we expect in the next room? Carnage, she said, taking out a sharpened stick of charcoal. And this concludes chapter 31 of Stepping Up. If you are enjoying this, please hit the like button. If you want to know when the next one is going to be, subscribe and hit the bell. If you want to support me, there's a link to my Patreon in the notes where you can read ahead of this story as well as through my backlog. If you want to read the story for free, it is available on Royal Road. And if you want to watch me read this, do my writing, it's Monday to Friday, 8 a.m. Eastern Time. And with that, the links are all in the notes. Now, and with that, I shall wish you a good day.